Whoa, wow, what a story, dude. Yeah, man, they just don't stop, you know. This is why listen, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. Believe them. There's no going through PIs and uh, snooping and all. No. Someone showed you who they are, leave. I've made those mistakes in the past.
5 years too long. Reconciliation failure. Anonymous if you decide to post on YouTube. Dear True Story, your channel popped up when I was browsing on YouTube, and I like that you are guiding the younger generation on infidelity. My story is about me and my journey into trying to reconcile. This story is unlike most of those you hear about. This is a story of a good marriage between two good people that was still devastated by infidelity. There are no bad people here. We met each other in our late 20s. She was absolutely beautiful. I felt like the luckiest guy in the world that she would even go on one date with me, let alone become my significant other. We had both experienced fun in our 20s, but both were looking for someone to start a life with. We were a great match and got along great. I felt like I had won the lottery. She was so beautiful, smart, and a truly caring person. We dated for a couple of years and then got married. It was a perfect time in our lives. We both were doing well in our careers, got to travel, and our love grew. A few years later, we had a daughter, and a couple of years after that, had a second daughter. My career really took off. I was fast tracked in a great company, and we were doing very well financially. So, well, that it made sense for her to quit working and become a stay at home mom. As much as I threw myself into my job, she did the same with hers. She was amazing. She was in the local papers and won numerous awards for all of the things she did for the school and the community. It's not like there weren't challenges. Every marriage has them. But on a scale of having a great marriage, ours was right up there. We were the envy of all of our friends. Time flew, and one daughter left for college, and a couple years later, so did our second one. We started making plans for our next chapter. I had made enough money that I would be able to retire in my late 50 SS. We booked a trip of a lifetime to the South Pacific for our 25th. First class travel, 4-star hotels, and for almost 3 weeks, which was longer than any vacation we ever took. The last thing we planned was the renovation of the family home, knowing that with my daughters gone, my wife would need things other than her charity work and working out to keep her from missing the girls. The house renovation would be a perfect project. After a long process of doing plans, which my wife oversaw, we choose a GC to do the job. He had a group of tradesmen he worked with. The process seemed to be going well. I did meet most of the guys, like the plumbers, etc. They all seemed fine with the exception of the electrician, who seemed full of himself. But the GC and my wife were comfortable, so I was okay with it. Big mistake. I said in the beginning that there was no villain here. That isn't entirely true. Mike the electrician turned out to be a predator. I found out later that he had a reputation of sleeping with the women whose homes he worked on. He also bragged that he could get these women to do any sex acts that he wanted. I had dealt with bad people like him in business. My wife never did. She really didn't stand a chance. He started grooming her from day one, first flattering her on the amazing ideas she had for the house, then over a period of days turning the comments on how attractive she was. He also started telling her about his dream of renovating houses to flip and how she could join him in this business. For a woman who, though still beautiful, was getting older and had no skills to go back to work, the affirmations he was giving her swept her away. He was young, good looking, and interested in her. She took the bait. She now talks about how lost she was and just never saw what he was doing. We even explored premenopausal issues that I now think might have played into what happened. She just saw everyone in the family's life moving forward while hers was going nowhere. It's sad she had such a low opinion of herself. She had everything going for her: a great family, a husband that loved and trusted her, and she just can't see it. He would come over first for coffee, then a beer for him, and wine for her, until he felt so comfortable that he went in for a kiss. They slept together the first time that day. The rest of the story here was gotten out of her over many days and hours of interrogation. She swore to herself that it was a one-time thing that she would take to her grave. I probably could have lived with a one-time mistake, but that's not what happened. He started coming around every day, and every day they would have unprotected sex in our bed. He had her doing backdoor sex, which we never did, as she didn't like it. He made good on his boast that he could get the housewives to do anything he wanted, and they had more backdoor in a few weeks than we had in 25 years of marriage. Even worse, we were still having sex, including oral, only hours after she was with him. She told me she was scared not to change our routine and said she still enjoyed the sex with me. The thought of that still disgusts me. Every day she vowed not again, and each time she broke that vow, the sex they had was way different than what we experienced. We had an active sex life, and after 25 years were very comfortable and worked hard to satisfy each other's needs. She loved what she called lovemaking. She would wear lingerie, light candles, want a lot of foreplay, and being held after. I liked it too. What we did was such a stark contrast to what they had. I asked her later why she didn't tell me she liked the kind of sex she had with him. She said it was novel for the first couple of times, but she swore she didn't like what he was doing. I'm not sure I believe it. Why keep going back? I'm sure in hindsight she feels that way now, but I never got over the nagging doubt that she enjoyed the sex with him more than me. I also never got over the feeling that she looked back at what they did with good memories. He was bigger than me, in better shape, younger, and the sex was new. I never got over that. Again, she swears she looks at it with disgust, but who knows? Why would she ever admit it? As bad as the sex, he convinced her to set up a meeting with me to bankroll his new venture to the tune on a few $100,000. The deal would have tied us to him for years. He sat in my house and gave a presentation that my college interns would have been embarrassed about. She was in and out of the room, scared to death, but I didn't notice as I trusted her so much. I gently turned him down, but apparently he was livid. The sex between them got even more brutal. He treated her like a common whore. Facials, rough sex, he even wiped some of his cum onto my pillow and laughed. All of this in our bed with pictures of us and our family staring down at them. The straw that broke the camel's back was when he had her give him oral sex behind a door after telling his buddies what he was going to do. He had sex noises and made sure that some of it went on her shirt. As she walked out of the room, the buddies were snickering, all except the carpenter, who I had a good relationship with, and was disgusted. He called me and told me what was going on and what she was doing every day. My world exploded. I talked to my attorney, and he gave me the name of a private investigator. I met with him that day, and he was going to go to the house the next day and enter with a letter from me giving him authorization. I had to play dumb that night, but I felt like I was going to explode. Unbelievable as it sounds, she was going to sleep with him again after what he did. She says she was scared of ending it and felt that when the job would be over in a few days, she would be able to get out of it. I doubt that, as I think it could have gone on for years, just with less frequency. He could have easily done a drive-by a couple of times a month, and I would have been none the wiser. My PI entered the house and into the room stating who he was. She was under the covers, and he had just gotten out of the shower. He told them he was going downstairs to call me, and they should get dressed. He flew out of there a minute later, and she came down, pleading not to call me, which he already had. I was crushed beyond belief. I swear, just like the movies where someone drinks something and their DNA changes them into a monster, I changed into a monster and have never been the same. I called his phone and he put her on. She was frantic, telling me it isn't what I think. I hung up. The PI left and I let her calls go to voicemail for the next hour. When I called her back, I told her I was a fool to trust her, but if she lies one more time, I was going to send the PI report to our friends and daughters. She swore it was over that second. We talked for a few minutes. I wanted him fired and all of the beds in the house replaced. She told me how humiliating it was, as everyone still working there knew why. I proceeded to check into a hotel for a couple of days and ghosted her. I knew for her, that was the worst thing that could happen to her. When I came home a few days later, she raced to hug me, but I told her not to touch me. It was over the next few days I got the story out of her. It was purely sexual. She had no dreams of leaving me for him. When she told me he meant nothing, I couldn't believe it. I screamed at her, "You destroyed our marriage for nothing. It would have been better if you loved the guy." She only gave me the gory details as I threatened to call him, and she was even more terrified that hearing them from him, knowing how much he hated me, would be worse as he would take glee in it. Like I said, I turned into a monster. When I wasn't calling her horrible names, I wasn't talking to her. I moved out of the bedroom. She didn't know what to do. She sat snot-nosed crying while I threatened to tell everyone what she did. She set up a marriage counselor the next week, which was a disaster. They told me how this could be a positive event to bring us closer. At some point, the anniversary trip came up and I remarked, I wasn't going. They both jumped on how important it was for our healing. The next day, I canceled the trip. I think this was the point where she knew we might not make it. Up to that point, she thought our family and 25-year marriage would win out. I spent the next year as a monster. When we finally started having sex, I wore a condom for 6 months after we were cleared for STDs. Even though they weren't needed after sex, I made her get up and leave the room. Oral sex, which I loved giving to her as she responded so well, was off the table after I learned I gave it to her after he had unprotected sex with her. No kissing, holding, anything. I treated her like he did. I did everything except leave an envelope with money on the dresser. I could hear her crying in her room at night, but never went in to try to comfort her. I will give her credit. She tried everything. Offered me a hall pass, a threesome, even telling me she thought one of her divorced friends who thought I was attractive would sleep with me. She made special dinners, which I never ate. Tried to plan something fun for our 25th anniversary, which I spent on a business trip. Watched while I went on golf trips with my buddies, but would not go anywhere with her. I knew she would never cheat again, but when I accused her of sleeping with her trainer, she quit him and the gym. I'm not proud of any of this, by the way. Things finally came to a head one day in a Home Depot. We passed by a tool belt and I said to her, "Why don't we go behind the shelves and you could blow me and the workers here could listen?" She dropped to her knees and was howling. I thought she was going to have a heart attack. I had to convince the staff not to call an ambulance. I had gone too far and I started crying for what I had done to her. I took her home, made her tea, put her to bed, and vowed not to do anything like that again. I know this is where the music should start playing and we would fall in love again. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. I wasn't a monster to her, and outwardly, things were okay. We sometimes laughed. Sex was better, but we were not the same couple. I was dead inside. The love I had for her was just not there. If I had to describe how I treated her, the best word would be cordial. She had humiliated me so badly, and my ego was so bruised. What this guy did to my wife in our bed played in my head all of the time. I felt so stupid that I was faithful after all of the opportunities I had for sex with hot young women that I never took. She was also broken. She knew she was 100% responsible for the state of our marriage. She gained weight, stopped her hobbies and seeing friends, and her self confidence was gone. She went to IC where they explored midlife crisis in women, where infidelity is not uncommon, especially when the wife gets into an empty nest situation. We even looked into if what happened was a manic event, as it was like a different person took over her body. She did say the whole thing was like an out of body experience, and she was watching this all play out, but powerless to stop. On one level, I understood why it happened, but I could never forgive it. It bothered me to no end that she really suffered no consequences, as we didn't tell a soul about what happened. In hindsight, I can see that the consequence of her knowing that she destroyed us is probably as bad as what I went through. Unbeknownst to me, she started working with a travel agent about another huge trip. This time, for now, what would be our 30th. It wasn't the same trip, but on the same scale. I had retired a year before, so this trip was going to be for a month. She was all excited when she brought it to me. I just lost it. It brought back all of the old feelings I had tried to stuff down. I wasn't angry she tried, but I went into a funk nonetheless. It brought me back to the happiness we had planning the first one, and now I had no desire to go on this one. After she got done and was waiting for me to tell her to book it, I blindsided her and told her I wanted a divorce. I had been thinking about it for a long time, and it just blurted it out. She thought at first I was joking. I really think that after close to 5 years, she thought we had made it through and would be together forever. I do regret the way I sprung it on her. We also had bought a condo down south a few years before, and I packed my bag and left for there. She once again was frantic. I let her convince me to do a trial separation first. I made it clear, however, that I wasn't going to live a married life and was free to pursue other relationships and sex. She was free to do the same. I proceeded to sleep my way through many women. After the affair, I dedicated myself to fitness. I went from a 36-inch waist to a 32-33 and packed on lean muscle. Plus, I still had money. I could date women 20 years younger than her who still had super hot bodies. This killed her. We had to tell our friends and daughters that we were separating. I wasn't going to be the bad guy, so the reason came out. People were shocked. Some thought there was infidelity as they saw our relationship changed, except they thought it was me, as it was so out of character from my wife. My daughters were very disappointed in her, but quickly circled the wagons around her. I was actually getting blamed for the divorce as I was the one that instituted it. My wife actually defended me and gave them a thumbnail of why this wasn't just a case of a one-night stand. My daughters felt that what she did for a few weeks shouldn't overshadow a 30-year marriage. They never really understood how much I was hurt. My wife pleaded to not get divorced. I tried to explain to her it wasn't just the affair, but also the self-loathing I had for myself for the way I treated her. Having your spouse treat you cordially is not a marriage, yet I couldn't stop. The divorce was amicable. It took a long time as our finances were complicated, but the terms were fair no matter what she did. She was still a great partner, and our wealth would never have happened had it not been for her holding down the home front. It's been a couple of years since the divorce. I have dated many women, but the relationships are measured in weeks and months, not years. I just haven't found anyone I think could give me the love I had for her prior to the affair. I started IC prior to the divorce and am working on my issues, especially as it pertains to my ego. I regret not doing therapy for myself from the start. I also wonder if her and the therapist were right and the 25th trip could have helped in the healing. I still have so many regrets, not only for what she did, but how I reacted to it. It could have gone so many other ways. I could have just walked away and not tortured myself and her for 5 years. Or I could have actually tried to repair the marriage instead of wallowing in my anger. I could have exposed what happened at the start, which probably would have been better and more productive than letting my anger fester. Who knows? My daughters ask me if I still love her, and I do. If she needed a kidney, I would be at the hospital in an hour. But if she needed me to tell her I forgive her for what she did, that still is impossible. This is my character flaw, and I'm working hard to give her the forgiveness she needs to move on. She has been in a downward spiral. She had some friends shun her. Others gave up on her as she did very little to reach out to them. I get texts from her still late at night after she has some wine asking for another chance. I have told her she needs to quit drinking and get back to the gym. I have told her she deserves happiness. She is just at this point is not going to get happiness with me. I really miss my life prior to the affair. At 63, I never thought I would be going on blind dates and swiping on an app. Even more than our past life, I miss all of the things that never happened going forward. Traveling together, sitting at the same table at our daughter's wedding, having grandchildren to our house, all destroyed for a few weeks of fun for her. I think about from time to time about trying again, but the mind movies pop up and kill that idea. Like I said in the preface, there are no terrible people here. She isn't a bad person. No one is that good an actor they could hide who they were over 30 years. But the person she was for these weeks and what she did was so heinous that she broke me. It's such a tragedy that one event that never should have happened was able to destroy a marriage and a family. I know I will find someone eventually when I'm ready, but it will never be the same. If you have made it till the end of this story, just pull the plug on the marriage. Don't turn into a monster because of other people. P.S. The other man ran away from my estate as he scammed money out of his family and friends.
Seriously, I've made those mistakes in the past. Dealing with somebody, and then they showed me exactly who they were. Then the waterworks came out, and oh, I didn't mean it, and I didn't know we were this serious. Like stupid stuff I let get away. Like you can't let silly things get away. When someone, and I learned that from someone, personally, like seriously, going back to what I remember, I dated one specific person, and this girl, this was way before I started this channel. And this was one girl I met. She was a great girl from what I understood, right? She was very, very religious. And I had did something. It was silly to me back then, and I couldn't understand. But the older I got, I understood, like, wow, like she had it in her mind the type of person she wanted. She wanted somebody that was just as religious, meaning like they had their basis was surrounded, or created by the word of God and things like that. But I did something, and she was like, "Ooh, no, that's a red flag." And when I think about it now, it's like it was a red flag. She was right to do what she did. I don't know what that girl's doing today. I don't know if she's ever found whatever she was looking for. But at the time, I remember thinking, "Man, what? That's so silly. Like we're not serious, but." Why date? Why tell someone you want to date them exclusively, but do silly little things as if you're single? So I'm not going to act like I'm perfect. I've made mistakes before, but when someone shows you who they are the first time, you have to believe them. You have to put yourself first. Guys, if you want to send in a story, send it to truestorynation@gmail.com. Here, I'll put it on the screen. That is truestorynation@gmail.com. I'm going to catch you guys at the next one.